But it's a weird one. I've got there's actually a big convention coming up very soon, which I've been going to for years. It's really it's very geeky. It's very geeky indeed. It's the Transformers convention.
Oh,
Yeah, I used to collect them. I used to collect. I was born in 1984 when they came out. So I was raised on them. I've always loved the
yes.
Transformers. Always had a bit of a soft spot for them. We were programmed. We can't help it. We were absolutely conditioned by like Reaganomic and Thatcherite advertising. The theme tune and the noise they made when they transformed and whatnot. It's ingrained. It's ingrained. I don't collect them anymore, but I've been going to the convention since 2009. Simply because,
right.
yeah, it's such a good atmosphere. It's such a positive space, and I've made so many friends through it. So many friends. In fact, some of my closest friends I've made through that community. It's really quite, it's really odd because we're like the old guard now.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Of course, those of us who were born in the 1980s and even the 1990s,
Yeah.
My friend Ray and that's where I met my friend Ray, who's also an ex of mine. It's very, very complicated, but he's like a really good friend now. He's 10 years older than me. And we were there last year, and we were in the queue to go into the hall, and we were stood behind a very young trans woman, and we got chatting to her, and she was saying, "Oh God, she was saying like, oh yeah, I was like born in the early 2000s, and I was raised on these like latter series. We did have this oh sweet summer child moment,
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
wow." 1984 G1, the originals. We're from the time where, like, if you get the toys now, parts of them have turned to dust. Some of these things are
Yeah.
actually like antiques at this point. They're worth money if you can get them complete.
Yeah, I was never really into Transformers.
No, not
I was
not your bag. Yeah,
that was the right age and gender for it, obviously. But yeah, I had a couple of them. I had a couple of the toys.
Yeah. I think
but
everyone did, didn't they? They're the kind of thing where they were just ambient, weren't they? They were
yeah, it
so
was.
like significant. They were like the Pokemon of their time, weren't they? They were so significant, and
You kind
they've
of.
never stopped. There has been a line of Transformers since the 1980s.
This is one of the things I'm learning. As I say, when I was a kid, it was like you kind of had to have at least one or two Transformers
Yeah.
toys in order to be, you know, in any way socially acceptable at
Yes.
school,
Well,
which I wasn't anyway. But
no, nor was I, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, everyone had them. Everyone had
yeah,
a
you just
Transformer.
had them.
Yeah. Mum would pick
But
them up from car boot sales or something like that, right? They would just be there.
but I'm discovering that so many of these things that I remember from my childhood didn't ever go away. I kind of just
No.
assumed that they did, but
Right.
Masters of the Universe, they're still
Right.
doing that
Still,
apparently and making
yes,
toys.
yes. I mean, that
Yeah.
did go away for a brief period. There was like a very brief period where it stopped, but it had a kind of resurrection in the early 2000s. And since
Uh-huh.
then, there has been a line of them. And I think even more so than Transformers, it's obviously now aimed at the adult fans. It's the nostalgia
Yeah,
market more than anything. It's very,
I
very
suppose.
interesting. So you're getting these very like complex toys, which are durable and aimed at adults and have it's very interesting, very
Hmm.
interesting indeed. I kind of like it. I kind of like the cultures surrounding them a lot of the time. As I say, the Transformers one is effectively a pride parade at this point.
Yeah.
It is honestly TF Nation, the UK Transformers convention. The demographics are huge, so broad and so wide, and for some reason,
Interesting.
it is, isn't it? I mean, Transformers for some reason attracts a lot of the queer community. I've
Yeah,
no idea why.
that really is interesting, isn't it?
It's
I,
bizarre. I mean, when my
it was
friend Ray and I,
it was such a boy thing when I was a
yeah,
kid.
Oh, well,
You
it
know?
was like very, very concertedly marketed as the like the prime boys' toy, wasn't it? It
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
you had My Little Pony and Barbie and whatnot aimed at girls, and you had Transformers and Mask and Masters of the Universe aimed at boys, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but no, it's broadened out massively. Like women fans are like a significant portion of the fan base, as they probably always were. They were just never allowed to, to publicly proclaim it. But when Ray
And
and
I'm
I went for the first time to the convention in 2009, we were a bit nervous because we were sort of like, are we going to be the only gays in the village?
yeah,
That was the feeling. It was,
expecting a
yeah,
sea of sort of neckbeards and ponytails and
kind of.
beer bags.
Don't get me wrong, that demographic is there too. That is
Yeah,
very much part of it. But no, we found very quickly that like that I would say actually it's one of those rare spaces where queer people probably do outnumber straight people and cis people.
that's fascinating.
I
Yeah,
don't know why that would be. I don't know why Transformers in particular has attracted that. I mean, I would have said Masters of the Universe all the way because it's so gay. It's
well,
so
yeah,
friggin'
it's
gay.
so
I mean,
camp,
like,
isn't
it's
it?
so
Yeah,
camp. I mean, you look at the old cartoon now, you look at like the original She-Ra, I mean, it's subliminally queerer than the new one. It's not openly
yeah.
queer like the new one is. It's just there. It's in the imagery. It's in like, yeah, and He-Man too. He-Man's very, very camp and very queer coded. I mean, like really, like, there are sometimes if you watch the cartoon where you're like, did they must have intended that. They must have known what they were doing. Yeah.
It's
Um,
hard to tell sometimes, isn't it? It
yes,
really is
it really
because
is.
the extent to which sort of people can do things that they consciously think what they're doing is sort of hyper masculine and
Yeah.
straighter than straight, but without knowing they're doing it, it
Ah.
goes so camp.
Well, the thing
It's
with like hyper straightness and expressions of masculinity is they're always the gayest things imaginable.
yeah, yeah.
Any gay guy who sees like a guy who is being too overt with their masculinity or their apparent masculinity or their straightness, the place we go immediately is closet case. Immediately. That's the place we go because we know it is a case of the lady doth protesting too much.
Yeah, there's actually
It's
a hell of a lot of the right wing media sphere that are like that. I have to say, um,
I
there's this guy Benny Johnson,
mhm,
who's this right wing YouTuber, and I know this is an old joke, but he's
yeah.
so deep into the closet. He's having
He's in
adventures in
Narnia.
Narnia.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Taking tea with Mr. Tumnus, yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sharing Angel Delight, a Turkish delight with the White Witch.
That would have been very different.
Angel Delight, yeah. Sorry.
Angel
Just
delight.
wait there, Edmund, while I whip up this.
Yeah, so whip up a batch. Yeah, yeah, yes, here's a spoon and a bowl. It probably would have been marginally less racist as well, because that is undoubtedly, having read the other books, that is Lewis like coding sort of anti-Islamic, anti-Turkish, anti-Arabic stuff into his work.
Oh God, I mean, because the other
Undoubtedly.
books in the series don't bother with coding; they just
No,
basically say it, don't they?
absolutely.
It's
I mean, like the horse and his boy, right?
I,
Wow.
it's been so long. I can't disentangle the various things from the various books. They're all sort of mushed in together, and I certainly can't
Yeah.
remember like names of characters or anything. But yeah, I looking back on what I remember of
Mm.
it, it gets seriously fucking
Well,
Islamophobic.
I mean, like the others kind of they obscure it, they camouflage it. It's all implication and metaphor and whatnot. Not very. It's very thin implication and metaphor, but nevertheless, Horse and his boy he just goes right for it. He just goes right for it. Anyone who isn't white and Narnian is evil, basically
Yeah,
evil.
yeah, that's
You
how I
know,
remember it. Yeah.
it's there's a reason why they never made they no one ever adapts that one. There's a reason why. And the funny thing is, like even in the 1980s, that would have been one of the easier ones to adapt because it doesn't. Most of the characters are human. There are very few magical creatures or whatnot in that one for some reason. But I guarantee you, even in the 1980s, when the BBC made those actually quite wonderful adaptations, that I
Oh, they're
guarantee
great. Yeah.
you there were like conversations about the horse and his boy that were going on at the BBC, and even then they would have said no, not that we can't do this. It's so fucking racist that we just
So
can't.
explicitly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's the fucking ignorance of it as well, because the way Lewis in that book, he collides loads of like Middle Eastern traditions, loads of like different religious disciplines, and there's Islam in there, and he mixes that with certain forms of Buddhism, and it just all clashes together. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's vile. It is absolutely repulsive. And
Oh,
like the
well,
protagonist, right? He
thank
is a
thank good thank goodness children's fiction knocked it off with that shit, huh? We don't do that
oh
anymore.
yeah, we don't do that anymore.
Harry fucking Potter. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah. What's the infamous black character's name from Harry Potter? It's
Oh
Shacklebolt or something, isn't
God,
it
I
like
don't
that?
remember. It's yeah, oh God, I don't know.
But all of
Oh,
like any character that is from any kind of ethnic demographic is
well, it's yes, but it's not just that. It's that all these sort of magical races are ethnic stereotypes. Like
yes.
people know, what's the character called? Dobby
Yeah.
from the movies, the house elf. In
Mhm.
the books, there's this whole race of house elves, right? And
Yeah.
they're apart from him, they're all happy to
Happy
be slaves. They're
slaves,
all
yeah.
happy to have to work for the
Mhm.
wizards without being paid. Like being
Oh,
paid is
yeah.
this the idea is horrifying to them, and they're explicitly described as having brown skin and huge rolling eyes, and they talk in like
Like
Aunt
a
Jemima
patois,
pidgin
yeah.
English
Yeah.
dialects.
It's yeah.
It's staggeringly, even for the 90s, it's stunning that nobody
Even
looked at it and thought,
well,
seriously?
by the time those books were coming out, that kind of thing was it was even bleeding out of fantasy fiction, which it was popular fantasy fiction was one of the last bastions of that kind of racism, you know, because it could be
Yeah,
coded as like, oh, it's not a black person or a Jewish person, it's a goblin or whatever, you know.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
understanding that many of like the traditions from which goblins derived were actually based on racial stereotypes anyway. You know,
Well, the goblins in the Potter
oh,
books are
they're
they
they're
are.
they're
I mean,
anti-Semitic
people,
stereotypes,
yeah,
aren't they? They are like
people.
straight out of anti-Semitic posters and magazines and whatnot.
It goes beyond that though. People don't realize because yeah, they've got big noses and they're greedy and
Mm,
shifty and untrustworthy and they run a bank. Yeah, but it's
mm,
they also there's a bit where there's something to do with a magic sword in the last book,
mm,
and there's this whole plot point that revolves around them not understanding because they made the sword and they
right.
don't understand or accept that because they sold the sword to a wizard, it's no longer theirs. So they think that because they made something, that means it's theirs,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
that makes them kind of communists, doesn't it?
Hmm. Hmm.
So you've got the Jews are not just evil bankers, but also the Jews are the communists as well.
Yeah. Wow. You've got
And
the
then
whole
you've
fascist conflation
yeah,
there, haven't you? You've
exactly. You've
got the
got this
whole
literal
thing.
Nazi ideology in there, and the centaurs are native. They're stereotypes of Native Americans,
Uh-huh.
and it goes on and on
And
and on in
on
those
and
books.
on. Yeah. Yeah.
The stuff people know about is only scratching the surface.
And most people know them from the films, let's be honest, don't they? And the films do
Yeah.
try to soften this stuff. They
The
make an
films tone it
effort.
down
Yeah,
enormously. Yeah.
they try to rewrite it quite significantly to tone this stuff down.
Well,
The
it's
other
one of the
stuff is,
interesting things about the films. The films are all, to a certain given value of the term, quite good
yeah,
for what they are. And
yeah.
one of the things that they're doing is that they are you can watch them doing it as well. They are coping with the source material. They are working around it. Not only it's stunning racism and
Mhm.
sexism and fat phobia and
Yeah,
ableism and all this
right.
stuff.
It's
It's all
ableism,
in there.
yeah.
But it's also just the sheer sort of dramatic inertness of them
Uh-huh.
and the contradictions in the characters as well. It's for somebody like me who's really interested in this, the
Uh-huh.
films are actually kind of interesting texts because if you set them next to the books they're adapting, it is
Uh-huh.
fascinating to watch the adapters try
Mhm.
to change the source material to make it
Yeah.
acceptable, not just like politically acceptable, but
Uh-huh.
dramatically acceptable as well.
Yes, yes. That's the other thing people don't get about the book. I mean, the books are actually very bad. Like the
The first
writing,
three
the
are okay.
pace, the structure. It's they're
The
just not
first I
very
always
good, are they? You
I
know.
always say the first three Potter books are quite good for what they
Mm.
are. So like that they should never have been a success on the
No,
level that they were,
no.
but for just mid-range
Hmm.
young kids, books, they're
Yeah.
okay. And then she gets rich. She gets
Hmm.
to be a phenomenon. She gets famous. And at that point, nobody can edit her. Nobody can say no to her. And the
Right.
books explode in length and they just become unbearable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. I mean, I mean, it was never. I mean, like on a purely like as a fan of fantasy, someone I was raised on fantasy fiction. The Chronicles of Narnia. They're the books I learned to read with when before I even went to school. I was reading those.
Mm,
And by the time I got to school, I'd read Tolkien, I'd read Alan Garner, I'd read so much, so much. So when Potter came out, Potter hit when I was around, I must have been 16, 17, maybe. And
mm.
there are people my age who are reading these books, and I remember them like people recommending them at school, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll have a look. And I remember reading them and just not understanding at all what the big deal
Yeah.
was. Just not. I did not enjoy them at all.
Well,
It's like they're very.
she gets the credit for the thing they say is, oh, she got a generation of kids reading. No,
Mhm.
no, she didn't. Because
No,
those are books for young people who haven't read anything else and don't
that's the
plan to read
truth.
anything else.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yes, yeah. There was just. I mean, even like contemporaneously, there was better fantasy fiction out there that you could have been reading. That was maybe a bit
Sure.
more
Yeah.
adult. That was maybe a bit more complex and interesting.
Well, the stuff
Um,
she's directly ripping off is better.
Yeah, yeah. The Worst Witch, for example, from
Yeah,
the
exactly.
1980s, right?
Yeah.
Infinitely better. Infinitely better. I mean, the first Earthsea book. The
Oh, yeah.
first
I mean,
Earthsea. I mean,
yeah,
like
that's on a different
it's
level
all.
entirely, isn't it?
This is it, right?
But you should you can give the first Earthsea book to a kid, a relatively young kid,
Hmm.
and it'll get them. It
Oh,
should do anyway.
absolutely, absolutely, it will. And it is when you read that first Earthsea book. It is like it's almost like when Rowling wrote the first Harry Potter. It's like she took it and inverted it. It's so
Yeah,
fascinating. Like the Chosen One narrative, which is completely inverted in the first Earthsea book. Sparrowhawk is not some like uber competent wizard. He's actually a jackass. He does something
yeah.
ridiculously terrible because of his teenage testosterone fueled egocentrism. He ends up upending the metaphysics of his own life. yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's like the weight with which magic is treated in Earthsea.
Hmm.
That's what really gets me. As a fan of fantasy, and I love magic. I love notions of magic in fiction. What Rowling does with magic, I fucking hate, and I've always fucking hated it. Where she takes what should be profound, what should always be a tool or an instrument of profound revolution or renaissance and transcendence, and she turns it into a materialist toy for spoilt fucking kids.
She makes it shopping.
Yeah,
She makes it
yeah,
commodities.
commodity
Yeah,
and comfort. That's all it
yeah,
is. That's
yeah,
all it is in Potter. It's like
yeah.
I could not get over that. As a kid, I could not get over that because I'd been used to like Gandalf, for example, in the Lord of the Rings. You can count the number of times Gandalf uses magic in the Lord of the Rings on the fingers of one hand. And whenever
Very
he
seldom.
does, it's
Yeah.
profound. It's something really big and significant. Um, Whereas Potter, it's just all this frippery. It's all performative and superficial, and it's jangling keys. Oh, look, the chocolate frog is alive and whatnot. And it's like, fucking why? You know, fucking
Yeah.
why? And
Yeah.
also that separation between the wizarding world and the mortal world, if you like. I hated that. Like, it was like, well, why aren't they using their magic to solve all the problems of the world? You know,
Mm.
one fairly competent kid from Hogwarts could solve all of the problems in the world. They could solve
Well,
world
and
hunger. They can turn like desert into rainforest. They could solve climate change. You know, they could end war,
yeah.
but they don't. They sit in their fucking little gulag, don't they? And they just
Well,
sit
as you
there
say,
performing. Oh,
magic in that world is stuff. It's comfort. It's services. It's
mhm.
toys. It's chocolate. It's shopping. It's
Yeah,
commodities. You know, the witch's broomstick becomes like, a luxury commodity item.
right.
That's in the shop window and you lust after it. The same way
Oh,
that you look at the new
the
whatever toys
wand
kids
or
like.
the
Yeah, and
whatever. Yeah.
so what if magic is more or less explicitly wealth in this
Hmm.
world, then the whole thing is about this tiny minority of people who
Hmm.
have ultra wealth and who hoard it, and they keep the rest of us ignorant of that so that we don't
Right.
get our hands on it. That is the
Yes.
status quo of the world. And
Yeah.
that status quo, the whole point of the story is to protect that status quo, to stop it being breached.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
books end with the status quo from the start intact,
Yes,
and
they
that the
do.
hero's mission is to protect and enshrine the status
Yeah.
quo,
It
to
becomes a cop,
restore it
doesn't it?
after it is disrupted. The only
Effectively.
person in that Yeah, the only person in that universe who is trying to change the world in any way, this world that is objectively, by any objective measure, a horrifying dystopia
Yeah.
of, undemocratic racial hierarchy, etc.,
Uh-huh.
etc. The only person in it who's trying to change it is Voldemort. He's the guy who
The
was
bad guy.
cast as
Yeah.
the evil Nazi villain.
Yep.
And the hero is the guy who's fighting any change, any disruption.
Yeah.
That's what that story's
It's
about.
absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And Potter just happens to be blessed because he's somehow elevated from the filth, right? The plebs
Well,
into
and
this world, yeah.
he is specifically from a sort of blessed magical line.
Yeah.
So even as these books, this is one of the fact that I do find these books fascinating. They are
Mhm.
terrible, terrible books, but they are fascinating. They're fascinating for the disjunction between what they think they're about and
Uh-huh.
what they tell you they're about and what
Yeah.
they're actually saying. Because
Yes.
the books, she manages to convince herself that she's writing this parable about tolerance
Hmm.
and about the injustice of prejudice and stuff like that. And what she's actually writing is a pain to apartheid and the hoarding of wealth by
Hmm.
an inherently superior elite.
Hmm.
And this figure, Harry Potter, who is supposedly sort of the representative of all this great, the liberal, enlightened, progressive view. That's what she
Uh-huh.
thinks this is that her heroes are championing. He is, as I say, he's championing lack of democracy,
Yeah.
hoarding of wealth and power, racial apartheid, and he is the one who protects it. He's the chosen one to protect it, and it's
Yeah.
specific in the books because he comes from a particular blessed family line.
Right.
So the
Right.
books do all this thing about, oh, it's wrong to discriminate against muggles and
Mhm.
mudbloods is a disgusting word and all that stuff, whereas it is specifically about the fact that there is an inherently superior,
Yeah.
genetically superior elite
Yes.
whose job it is to protect the ordained
Mhm.
social order.
It's innate in the notion that wizards are born rather than something
Yeah,
you learn.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
right.
hate I
Yeah,
hate that. I hate it. I
and you go
hate
to
its
boarding
guts,
school.
you know. Yeah,
You,
yeah,
you, you're
right.
born better, and how do you know somebody's born better? Because they go to boarding
Because they
school.
go to boarding school, right? Absolutely. It's hateful, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely
Yeah,
hateful.
it
I've
is.
always
It's
wanted to
vile.
write the answer to it where the muggles find their own form of magic. It's ritual magic. You have to learn it. And then you get the Potter character who's, regarded as this great liberal hero coming down on them, almost starting like a racial war against them to stop it happening.
Yeah, and he would
Yeah,
too,
absolutely
because
he would.
Harry Potter is a bastard.
Yeah,
The books don't know this, but
right.
behind their own back, that's what he's depicted as. He's
Yeah.
arrogant, he's selfish, and he's unlike God, you just said it. What's the name of the character in Earthsea?
Oh, Sparrowhawk
Sparrowhawk. He's the
or
point
Jed.
of the
If you want
story.
his true name, it's Jed.
His true name. The point of the story is his fallibility, right?
Hmm.
Harry Potter,
Absolutely, yeah,
the point of the story is to deny that his fallibilities exist. The
yeah,
books, or sort of the authorial decree that comes down from on high by the author, because that's another thing these books do, is they tell you how to interpret them. The
yeah.
author God says, this is what this means, and
Hmm.
no divergence from my authorial decree is permitted. What the
Absolutely.
books tell you about this kid is that he's just great. He's perfect.
Harry
He's
Potter can do no
a
wrong,
hero.
right?
He's and objectively, if you read it, he's a selfish, arrogant, rude,
Yep.
nasty little
Cruel.
shit
Yeah.
who goes spoiled little shit who goes everywhere he goes. He causes chaos
Hmm.
and unhappiness and hurts people
Uh-huh.
because and he never looks back and never learns a single fucking lesson in his entire life. The books will tell you that he does, but he does
Right,
not.
but he doesn't. Yes, the
He's
character doesn't
perfect.
demonstrate it, right? He doesn't
No,
demonstrate it. That's the thing. And that's why the author has to tell you, has to insist, actually, this is how you interpret this event. This is how you interpret
exactly.
that,
Yeah,
Um, yeah, they are amazingly bad, those books. And I remember, like, having arguments with people when I was at school about this fact. And of course, it's very hard when you're at school and when this thing is a phenomenon, because they can just point to the phenomenon, right, and just say, well,
yeah,
it's not because of this and that and oh my god, I remember like comparisons because of course the Peter Jackson films were out at that time. The Lord of the Rings films were out at the time, and
yeah,
I remember people making comparisons. That was the big comparison between the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter. It was almost like a Sega Nintendo kid kind of divide going on there. And I was
yeah.
firmly in Camp Tolkien. Firmly in Camp Tolkien at that point, and I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand why you would even consider Harry Potter in the same breath. I just could. It was foreign to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I
Anyway,
mean, we have planned. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, that's a very good introduction because we did talk about doing like a full like series on Harry Potter, right?
I would love to because I
I'd
have
love
so
to
much
do that.
hate
Like, go
for it,
through the books and the films like one by
Yeah,
one. I think that'd
and
be a
I do,
great
as I
idea.
say, I do find it sort of darkly fascinating the stuff that's going on in there.
Yes,
Um,
I do too, because it is like a perversion of everything I love. It's a
yeah,
perversion of fantasy.
yeah.
You compare, I mean, like a direct comparison, another children's book, The Thief of Always by Clive Barker,
Oh wow, yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, which
yeah.
is a contemporary of these books. And I'm really sorry, but like, personal taste aside, but the Harry Potter books are just not worth mentioning in the same breath,
No,
are they? I mean,
they're
the
not. They're
the
just not. No.
ideas, the complexity, the emotional complexity, the respect to its intended audience that the Thief of
Yeah,
Always pays,
yeah. But
unbelievable.
Potter panders to its audience, though.
Yes, it does.
It offers a comforting
Yeah,
fantasy
yeah.
life. Imagine if
Jangling
you yeah,
keys.
yeah,
Yeah, it's all about comfort. Ultimately, it's about comfort. Imagine if you didn't have to worry about anything. Imagine if everything was taken care of for you, and magic was the answer to everything. Because that's what
yeah.
magic is for.
That's right.
Whereas in
Yeah,
Earthsea, in
the ultimate
Earthsea,
threat in all those books is, Harry Potter won't be completely happy. That there
yeah,
will be something like
yeah,
there's a competition, or a new taunt that's going around the
mm,
bullies, or something that's worrying him, and
yeah,
that is the horror. The
yeah,
idea that anything will worry him or disrupt his pleasure for two
right,
minutes. And of course, at the end of the book, it's always, nah, it's fine. Everybody will come to realize that Harry is actually the specialist little snowflake
hmm,
that ever lived, and everybody will
yeah,
admit they were wrong. And yeah,
yeah. It's awful. It's awful. And again, like referring back to Earthsea, the way Ursula K. Le Guin treats magic in that world is language, right? It's the
Yes,
fundamental
yes.
language of the universe, of reality. So when you use it, you are effectively rewriting reality around you. So it's profound. Even though, like, the most minor bit of magic is profound, and you learn not to use it, right? That's the whole thing. You learn restraint. Um, and that is beautiful. It gives magic such incredible profundity, and it links it to the form. It links it to the medium of fiction.
Mm,
It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous notion. Whereas in Harry Potter, it's fireworks. It's just wave the wand,
yeah,
or you say the
yeah.
stupid incantation, and that's what got me as well. Just on a purely aesthetic level, when people were aping I remember saying to a girl in one of my classes, like, the fucking stupid cod Latin
Yeah,
I hate that. I hate it. I hate it so much.
yeah.
Oh, as a mechanism for magic, I hate it. I don't know why I hate it, but I do.
Yeah, it's.
Anywho,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? We'll
No,
get into
Thief
it
of
in.
Always is
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, I love that book so much, and I'm preconditioned to like it because it's Barker. But even given that, it's Barker doing a children's book, which I imagine a lot of people were like, Hellraiser guy, really? Yeah, I know his
He's written a
publishers
couple
were.
of
He,
children's
he
books, hasn't he?
has,
I
he
think.
has, yeah, yeah. There's the whole Aberrats trilogy, which is like it's like his take on Alice in Wonderland, and it's great. It's
Yeah.
bonkers. I mean, it is totally off the rails. It is like it's kids LSD. The Aberrat. It's
Mm.
fantastic. It just sweeps you along. It's beautiful, image after image after image. It's about this imaginary archipelago where every hour of the day is an island, and that the ethos of that hour informs the culture of the island. Awesome. It's
God,
awesome.
yeah, that's. I haven't read it, but yeah, that sounds disturbingly close to one of the premises of the novel that I'm trying to write.
Oh no! No!
Yeah,
Oh no! I mean, it's very good. It is. The enthusiasm with which those books hurtle along is unbelievable. The energy of them, gorgeous work. Anyway, we're
well, I
actually
mean,
here. I mean,
he's on a different level.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
Barker in it. We're actually here.
yeah.
I mean, the principal subject this evening is kind of the anti-Barker. It's we're back. We're back with Lovecraft. We're back with Lovecraft.
We're back.
And
Yeah, another Lovecraft
we
retro.
are.
Yeah,
And I mean, the
yeah.
last one, that was such a good shout. That was, I mean, oh my god, the Shadow Out of Time.
Shadow Out of
What
Time.
a
Yeah.
story! What a story! And this is a really good sister to it. It's a real if these two stories. If someone is coming to Lovecraft anew, who's only like ever heard of him ambiently or understands him through like the imagery because of video games or whatever, these two these are the first two I'd recommend.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you could do a lot worse. This is
Definitely.
as I said last time, Shadow Out of Time might be his masterpiece for
Yeah.
me. This, I think I would have to put this a little bit lower down, the
Yeah,
list
this
of greats,
one.
but
This one isn't
this
as
is really
ambitious.
great.
I mean, it's great for what it tries to do, isn't it? I mean, I think
I mean, it's one of my
this one,
favorites.
yeah, this one is a different technical exercise. I think in Shadow Out of Time, he's exploring so many profound and massive ideas and doing it really beautifully. I've got to say,
Yeah,
playing with
yeah,
lots of ideas. Here, it's much more refined in terms of what he's trying to do. It's that existential paranoia that he's so infamous for. Yeah, that cosmic horror. But in this one, for me, it's the way he communicates it and the means by which he communicates it. I mean, the way I always look at it is that the Shadow Out of Time, as we discussed in the previous video, go watch it, by the way, guys. The horror in the source of horror in that story is time itself. It's
yeah,
the it's the
yeah.
cons it's the incalculable corrosive nature of time. Here
I
it's
mean,
it's Sorry,
that's
go
a
on.
constant in all Lovecraft's
Yes,
fiction.
it
The idea
is.
of time, this sort of the
Yeah,
time as this vast expanse,
absolutely, and it's
um,
in this one
is
too. I mean, it's absolutely
it's
in this one too. I mean,
it's
there's
ontologically
notions.
horrifying. I
Yeah,
mean, he says as much in the, I think in the essay,
yeah,
supernatural and weird fiction or whatever it's called. But yeah, I think Shadow is the clearest statement of that in
yeah.
narrative form,
I
isn't it?
think it's the one that
Whereas,
focuses on that concept, and you
yes,
rather than it just being ambient, just being part of the horror. It is the horror. It's the core of it.
yeah,
Here, it's place, it's distance, it's landscape, it's setting. That's the horror. It's I mean, there's the notion of distance comes up again and again and again in this story and in many and various forms. I mean, even the story itself takes place over grand distances. It's epistemological, so it's told in retrospect, and it's about correspondence primarily, right, between Wilmarth and Akeley, who are vast leagues apart from one another. And that distance, that separation, becomes a source of horror in and of itself because the way they're communicating. I mean, Wilmarth doesn't really know what's going on with Akeley beyond the correspondence he receives for the longest time. And those vast expanses of silence, though that's scary in and of itself. And then when you know where Akeley is from, like the setting that where he lives on the slopes, the lower slopes of the brilliantly named Dark Mountain, which is this tract of Americana, right, of Midwestern Americana, which is mountains and wild spaces, it's forests. It's a very American story in that regard. It's got elements of colonial paranoia about it, doesn't it? The untamed wilderness, what secrets, what darkness could be waiting there. And the fact that Akeley is bit elderly, and even when the story begins, maybe is erring on the infirm, and maybe even the paranoid, although his paranoia is absolutely justified, it turns out. That it's it's like the landscape itself has like an occult quality to it. It's beautiful. I love that element of the story. And he keeps referring to it again and again and again. There's the bit at the very end when Wilmarth actually physically goes to visit Akeley. And when he's being driven along by Noise, I believe it is, who's
hmm
one of the human beings who's in the employ, or the if you can call it that, or the enslavement maybe of the alien fungal things. And he talks about looking out of the window at the landscape as it's rolling by, and something about the panorama of it and the angles and the dimensions of it has an almost cult quality of the uncanny about it. It's like there's
yes.
something unnatural about nature itself. It's not just the fact that we know, we're fairly sure at this point that it's infested by alien creatures and extra dimensional entities that are pretty hostile to humanity. It's the landscape itself, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Although you're absolutely right. I mean, this is late period Lovecraft, and this is part of a strain of stories that he's writing at this
Mm.
point in time, where he is very interested in landscapes and
Yeah,
environments. Probably the most famous of the stories like that is At the Mountains of Madness,
of
which is
course, of course.
very much concerned with a particular kind of environment.
Yeah.
We saw a little bit of this in Shadow Out of Time as well, particularly in the last section where he goes to Australia on the
Yes.
archaeological dig, and you get the extended section, which is quite like the extended section in the last third of Whisperer in Darkness. Actually,
Hmm.
the extended section where he climbs down into the underground chambers.
Yeah.
In Whisperer, it's the extended section, as you say, with in the car with Noise on the way to Akeley's
Right.
place from the train station. You get an extended description of an environment
Uh-huh.
as the narrator in some sense sort of descends into it or is enfolded by it.
Yeah.
Similar sort of thing happens in At the Mountains of Madness. They go down and down and down into this landscape, which has been very firmly established. We talked a little bit about the Mound last time, the story that he
Mm.
Ghost wrote or co-wrote with Hazel Heald.
Hmm.
That does a very similar thing. Yeah, it's interesting the extent to which he is becoming interested in horror landscapes as a kind of horror in
Hmm.
themselves. And distance, as you say, one of the things.
Vastness. There's something about vast landscapes, and like in the same way that he talks about lengths of time that human beings can't conceive of, there are also tracts of distance that we can't really get our heads around, and that becomes uncanny and horrifying in and of itself.
Yeah, thinking about it, that because you said that the horror of this one is the horror of distance.
Hmm.
I would have sort of, if you'd asked me first before you
Hmm.
said that, I would have said something like, I think the fundamental horror of this one is to do with consciousness and its
That
basis
too.
in matter. I think actually that's the same thing looked at from a different angle,
Hmm.
and as is the horror of time with the shadow out of time. And I
Hmm.
think this story actually, it kind of gets at that with the emphasis on the idea of humans traveling the creatures, whatever. I think some people refer to them as the Migo because they
Yeah,
Akeley and Wilmarth decide that the creatures that are living in the hills in Vermont are the same as the Himalayan Migo. So some
right.
people talking about this story, they refer to these strange creatures in this who
Uh-huh.
are quite distinct from the great race of Yith or the old ones or anything.
Yes,
They're
they're their
different, or the
own thing, aren't
Starspawn.
they?
They're a different
Yeah,
thing.
they're a
Yeah.
different race.
Um,
They're vaguely
some
linked
people
to the Cthulhu cycle, but only vaguely. Yeah,
they predate them, don't they? I mean,
yeah,
Akeley
that's
says
right.
that they predate, but they're distinct, and some people call them the Migo. And the
Hmm.
Migo, assuming it is them talking to Wilmarth at the end,
Hmm.
and that's a different discussion. They talk about and quote unquote Akeley talking to Wilmarth at the end,
Yes.
talk about going to all these vastly distant places.
Yeah,
I mean, there's this emphasis on Yog-Sothoth, the new planet
the
that's
new
been
planet,
discovered,
which is Pluto,
that
right?
which is linked to Pluto, yeah, which had just been discovered at the time
Mm,
Lovecraft was writing this. He works the discovery of
yeah.
Pluto into the
For some reason,
story.
that is a
There's
real preoccupation for him, isn't it? That becomes like a thing of horror for him for some reason. The fact that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
discover new planets, right?
Well, I think it's the idea of a planet at the outermost point of the solar system, as they
Right.
would have thought of it then. I think now
Yeah.
we scientists think of the solar system as extending, and of course we now think of Pluto as
As
not
a
a planet,
not
but
a planet
one of the
anymore. Yeah.
it's part of the sort of belt of large rocky icy
Hmm.
objects that is out past Neptune. But
Yeah.
scientists now think of the solar system as much more expansive. Back then, they thought of the solar system as being sort of the extent of the planet's orbits,
Hmm.
and then to discover that there's this other one, which is not only the outermost, but is much further away, even from
Much.
Neptune. I
Right.
think it's something about that, isn't it? It's something about the idea of distance, because again, the story goes out of its way to say the quote unquote Akeley, when he's talking to
Mm.
Wilmarth, he talks about how the sun is just a star from the point of view of Yoggoth.
Yeah.
So and it's black, it's completely lightless.
Yeah.
And he's emphasizing sort of how far away it is, how out at the edge it is,
Uh-huh.
how cold and dark it is, because it's so far away from everything human. And even that, that's just a stepping stone to all these
Right.
other places they're going to go.
That's
And
the
the
other
point
thing,
the
right?
point being, just to close this up,
Yes, of
is that
course.
in order for humans to do that, they have to be removed from their human bodies and in some way sort of meshed with the technology of the Migo.
Mm.
So you have it. There you have the link between what you immediately went to and what I immediately went to, because you immediately went to the distance
Mhm.
and I immediately went to the consciousness and bodies. And that's the link, isn't it? Because the distances involved are so huge that in order for humans to visit them, which is
Uh-huh.
whether you want to is a dubious prospect, you can't be human. You have to literally be made
Right.
into something else.
Into something
You
else.
have to be
Something.
physically made into something else in order to
Yeah.
cope with distances that vast.
Yeah. It's an amazing concept. It's an amazingly brilliant concept. And I mean, it's interesting because like we have something very similar happening in the Shadow Out of Time. but in a very different
Yes.
way. In the Shadow Out of Time,
Disembodiment.
we talked about a kind of dualism that he goes for in that one, where the consciousness is like a phenomena in and of itself that can be separate from the brain, from the biology. Whereas here, it's not the case. The mind and the brain are synonymous. You can't have one without the other. But the brain itself can be disembodied and
Yeah.
maintained. And the way he
Yes.
talks about it as well, I mean, this it's hard to know. There's a lot of implication and a lot of stuff that's very difficult to determine whether it's true or not in this
It's very, very
story.
ambiguous.
It's
It's
very
ambiguous all the way
ambiguous
through this one. Yeah,
and
it's one
very
of the things I love about
paranoid.
it.
It's a very
Yeah.
paranoid story as well. So you really can't trust any of the voices that you're
It's
listening
kind of
to.
it's kind of a conspiracy thriller, isn't it?
Oh,
It's kind of a
very.
cover up.
I mean, it's like an X-Files episode. This is you
Yeah.
could rewrite this into an X-Files episode so easily. It's
Yeah, and
got every. Sorry, go on.
it starts with cryptids as well. The whole opening
Right.
section is basically about cryptids.
Yes,
It's
these
and
crab
it's
creatures that turn up in the
yeah,
river, right?
yeah.
The corpses that are washed up. Which, of course, I mean, I love. Again, even that's ambiguous. I love the way Wilmarth, in his place, in his setting, far away, because he's an urban figure, right? He's in university. He's a
He's a
professor. He's a
Miskatonic U in Arkham.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. So in his place, he has no real concept of these things. And his idea, the way Akeley interprets them and communicates them to him, he's very skeptical about the fact. I mean, he makes reference to the superstitions of rural folk and the folklore of that
mm.
people brought over from Ireland and Europe and whatnot, and how they're misinterpreting. And in a weird way, he's kind of right. I mean, that's another interesting element of this story, actually, which I found really interesting. There's a very subtle anti-colonial element to it. You have him, Lovecraft himself, actually decrying the folklore of the white settlers, of the Europeans and the Irish, and the Native Americans have got it bang on right. They're
Yeah, and
absolutely correct.
the low class whites as well
Yes.
are the ones more likely to get it.
Yeah.
They're the ones most likely to recognize stuff that Akeley puts before them and believe it. Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
interesting? And I mean, it's the other anti-colonial element. The part that's actually much stronger is what the aliens are actually doing, which is they're very materialist. They're effectively stealing the resources of Earth.
They're
They're
mining.
mining. They're
Yeah,
mining. Yeah, they're
yeah.
taking minerals and things, aren't they? And oddly, I mean, they're doing it in a much less violent and genocidal way than the European settlers did the Americans. So it's interesting, isn't it? Again, it's one of the ambiguities. You never really get an understanding in the story of quite what the aliens' relationship to humanity is. It doesn't seem like they want a war or anything like that, or like they want to wipe us out, or like they want even conflict as such. In fact, if you take the voice of the of Akeley, quote unquote, at the end, if you do take that as read, then it's not that hostile, really. In fact, they're kind of offering us opportunity in the strangest way.
Well, yeah. Firstly, I think that's definitely not Akeley.
No, no, it's not
Speaking
Akeley. I mean,
at the end.
but what has happened to Akeley? Where is he, and what have they done with him? I mean, has
Well,
he been spirited
yeah.
away? Has his brain been taken out, and has he been like taken on one of these grand voyages? Have they actually taken him across time and space and shown him all this stuff that they promise?
I think he's sat on that shelf
He is,
in the
isn't
cell
he? Yeah. He's
with
so
Akeley written on it.
so
'Cause
he
I
has.
think
I mean,
I think we hear a little bit of Akeley at the very end when
mhm.
Wilmarth is upstairs and he's eavesdropping as best he can on the
Oh
conversation that's
yes.
going down below. You get a bit where the speech machine is talking
Uh huh.
because he's heard when he was downstairs speaking with, as he thought, Akeley in the chair.
Hmm.
At one point, he switches on one of the cylinders. He
Uh huh.
plays one of the cylinders, and it talks to him as a human who has been disembodied and is now happy to be in alliance with the
Absolutely.
Neo.
Yeah.
And who and what that is and what they're saying and how sincere it is, that's another question. But there's
Absolutely,
another
yeah.
cylinder on the shelf that has Akeley's name written on
Aegis
it.
name written
And
on it,
then
yeah.
Wilmarth is eavesdropping on the conversation. He hears the speech machine again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's meant to be not the same entity he was speaking with earlier
Mm.
through the speech machine. It sounds to me like it's Akeley's
It's
cylinder being played on the machine, because
yeah.
it says something like, "I brought it on myself, damn you," and stuff like that.
Right.
It sounds like Akeley accusing
Uh-huh.
from inside the cylinder. That's what's happened to Akeley, I think.
Isn't that fascinating though? Because like, what does that imply? I mean, they could have just got rid of him, right?
Yeah.
They could
Well,
have just got
this
rid
is
of
it.
him.
They're here mining, and they're not just mining for metals. They're mining for mines as well.
Mm.
They are mining for us.
Yeah.
In a sense, to the extent that they can use us.
Yeah.
I think there's a big clue hidden in plain sight in this story, which is the
Mhm.
bust of Milton on Akeley's desk. And I
Oh,
think, with Milton, you immediately think Paradise Lost,
of course.
and what is that? It's the war in heaven,
Hmm.
and but between the warring factions in Paradise Lost, humanity and the fate of humanity is kind of we're kind of the pieces on the chessboard, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think that's what we are to the Migo. We're kind
The,
of we are to them as Adam and Eve are to Satan. We are to be used to achieve a certain
interesting.
result in the
And
war in heaven.
yeah, and we never really know what that is, like what our
No,
place is, to
no.
what truths we've been told at this point, and what lies we've been told at this point. Because of course, the ostensibly the other human mind that he speaks to is almost rapturous about it all,
Yes, yeah,
assuming
but
that it's telling the
it would be,
truth.
wouldn't it? Because, as you say, there's an anti-colonial. I mean, you can read it that way anyway.
Mhm.
And what's being offered here is kind of this. Well, we come and we
Mhm.
bring with us our amazing technology, and we bring progress, and we
Uh-huh.
bring knowledge, and we expand civilization, and you can benefit from that. And
Right.
all you have to do is just acquiesce to us coming here and
And
taking what we want.
taking what we
You
like.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the offer is it sounds attractive, but
Yeah. Right.
it's got to be the false promise
Mhm.
of the
The
of the
settler, right?
civilized,
Of the
yeah,
colonialist. Yeah.
of the settler, the colonialist, offering the expansion of civilization and the
Mhm.
expansion of knowledge. It's got to have that same double side to
It's
it.
got to have the sinister edge to it, isn't it? The thing about the
Yeah.
story that really interests me, though, is because there's no detail on that, we don't know to what degree it's sinister. We don't really know what they want us for.
No.
And that's
They
fascinating
obviously
to me.
they want us for something though, don't they?
Something, yeah. But what? You know, and
Yeah.
that to me is absolutely fascinating. The fact that they don't just, I mean, Akeley is just a pain, isn't he? I mean, to them, he's just an irritant, right? And he's not even that significant ultimately. But they don't just kill him. They don't just do away with him. They
No,
take
I
him for
mean,
something.
why they're interested in him is a question, isn't it? I mean, I
Mm,
think you can interpret it as just kind of, as I say, this is kind of a conspiracy thriller,
yeah,
and we're kind of watching a cover up.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Because you don't
Akeley has
again.
gotten too close. He has the black
Yeah,
stone.
right.
That has to be gotten back. And there's a lot of emphasis once they've taken Akeley. There's a
Mhm.
lot of emphasis from them on luring Wilmarth to them and
I
saying,
mean, it's
"Bring
in
all
a
the stuff. Bring all the
yeah.
bring all the
It's
evidence because we want all the
it's
evidence."
I was listening to the Horror Babble reading of this earlier, and if you look in the comments, and they're absolutely right. There's a lot of people saying like it kind of should have twigged there.
Yeah.
There is, I mean, you could take it as a weakness of the writing in a way, but actually I kind of like it. I like the lightness with like the fraternal lightness with which Akeley Akeley quote unquote says in his correspondence, oh yes, that material that you've got that can like expose everything, bring that along and we'll talk about it. It'll be great material for discussion, bring everything. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And don't
Wilmarth is
forget.
just like, yeah, don't forget, by the way. Yes, don't forget. And oh, by the way, don't tell anybody either, because you know it
Yeah.
might. We these fantastic secrets, they might bring unwanted attention and whatnot. You know, we need to introduce this stuff gradually so as not to cause upset and whatnot. You know, just this is between us. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wilmarth. I mean, Wilmarth should have twigged at that point. He really
And
should.
he turns up at the train station, and the first thing Noyes says is, "You've got all the evidence, haven't you?" You know, and he gets into Akeley's room, and almost the first thing Akeley says is, "Put it all on the table, all the evidence, put it there." You know, yeah. I mean, I think you can fairly call that a slight weakness in the
Yeah,
story.
I suppose. I mean, what I do like is that Wilmarth does have these almost like subconscious misgivings as he's on his way. There's always this sense that he wants to turn back, that he wants to run, and that you get things like when he reaches the farmhouse that Akeley lives in. There's no sounds of livestock. There's no sound of life at all. There's nothing, even in the
No, that's right.
surrounding
Yeah,
woods.
very, very eerie, that section where he
Very.
he
Oh,
realizes that there's no sound.
it's brilliant. I mean, it's one of one of the things that's very attractive about this story. I mean, Lovecraft often goes he reaches for profound cosmic existential horror. He doesn't often go for immediate threats to the self. And even when he does, they're kind of incidental. They're serving a greater purpose. Here, the horror is a little bit more intimate. It's a little bit more personal, and it's very acute. Those sections towards the end, when Wilmarth is in the farmhouse, and you know that he's basically been caught, he's been lured into the trap, and you know it. You know
Yeah,
it as the reader.
and they've tried to feed him drugged coffee, obviously, as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. Brilliance,
yeah.
absolute
Now,
brilliance.
Will does a fair bit of sort of self gaslighting, I think, in
He
the course
does,
of, 'cause
yes.
he does kind of know, you
Yeah.
know, but he repeatedly says, "I suspected something was wrong, but then I came up with a reason to discount my own suspicions and go anyway."
I mean, to be fair to him, they gaslight him a lot too. I mean, they tell him, they spin him a right old yarn. Oh, Akeley's an old man and he's had an asthma attack and he's not very well at all. He can't stand too much light, so the light is going to be dim. You know,
Yeah,
and I love the way that Wilmarth reinforces that narrative in his own head when he first engages with quote unquote Akeley, who is not Akeley. Um, I
it
love
does
that because
remind me a
yeah,
little bit of that episode of Faulty Towers where Sybil walks out at just before the anniversary party, and Basil has to get Polly to pretend to be Sybil in bed. So he draws the curtains and puts her in dark glasses and stuff like that, as a wave at them silently from across the room.
yeah, it's brilliant. And of course, as the reader, you know what's going on. You've twigged before Wilmarth has, I think, at this point.
Oh, definitely, yeah, and I think you're meant to. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. It's not trying to pull a fast one over the
no, it's
reader. You know, it's not
yeah,
doing the M Night Mamalon thing of like, oh, twist. It's not trying to do that, you know.
no, it's it's
It,
it's very definitely going for dramatic irony. You are
yeah.
supposed to know something that Wilmarth doesn't know.
Mhm.
I think he's got himself into a slight sort of technical bind there by having the story told by Wilmarth in
Yeah.
the past tense. So
Yeah.
there's no reason really for Wilmarth not to say, "I should have realized this was a trap" or
Of
something like that.
course.
But
Yeah. It's
yeah,
it's it's the
it's
problem with
okay.
like epistemological horror fiction, isn't it? That
Yeah,
often they lack impetus and energy very much because of the form. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the Victorian fiction, which was written epistemologically because that was the style of the era, it lacks energy. It lacks that immediacy. But here I mean, it is told in the past tense, but he kind of abandons it at that point, doesn't he? And it becomes so immediate that it may as well not be. You may as well be there living it with him.
yes, and that's emphasized by the fact that Lovecraft often does this as well. It's one of his stylistic ticks.
Uh-huh.
Before he tells you the thing that he wants to be the sort of horrifying,
Yeah.
dramatic final denouement,
Yes.
the final image, he skips forward a little bit. So he
Yeah.
says, he doesn't tell you the next thing. He says, well, after the next thing
Yeah.
happened, this, that, and the other happened, and then he goes
There's
back.
an edit, isn't there? There's almost like a
Yeah,
filmic edit where,
yeah.
one moment he's in Akeley's study and then the next he's in the ford from the barn and he's hurtling away down the mountain track, yeah?
Yeah, because the last thing he wants you to read is the face and hands
The face and hands, yes,
of whatever his name is, Akeley.
of
Yeah,
Akeley, yeah. Which I mean, it is a little contrived and it is a little clunky. It does
I think
work
this just
though.
goes with the territory. To be honest,
Yeah,
this is
it's
just Lovecraft
Lovecraft,
for you.
isn't it? It's just
If you can't,
Lovecraft, yeah.
yeah, if you can't assimilate clunkiness of that kind, then
Then
Lovecraft
well,
probably isn't for you.
it's probably not for you. No, no, it probably isn't. But it does work. I mean, it's a very cool image, I've got to say.
Oh
And
yeah, no, it's very unnerving and
yeah,
disturbing.
it
Um,
doesn't have the same resonance and like that very profound sense of the uncanny that the end of Whisperer of Shadow has.
Shadow, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
But it
think yeah, I think Shadow is the more profound, bigger,
definitely,
more cosmic story. I think.
definitely.
But
But
Whisperer
I
certainly
do love
has.
that final section, though. I love that final
Mm,
section in Whisper and Darkness. I think the ratcheting of tension is fantastic. And tension doesn't. I mean, Lovecraft is often not that great at tension, but just because of
yeah.
the style he adopts, there tends to be an almost like passivity sometimes to the way he writes because he's so obsessed with describing the thing to you and emphasizing the impression to you that it kind of blunts the immediacy or the tension. Here it's really well drawn. It really you feel the hackles going up. Wilmarth is walking into some awful situation, and because of the vagary of the story, because of the ambiguity, you don't quite know what that situation is.
No, and I think that's kind of why you have to have that dramatic irony that he's
Mm,
going for in that last section. You have to know more than Wilmarth
yeah,
understands at that point because that's what makes it tense, isn't it?
yeah,
It's the disjunction between your mounting awareness of all these things around him that are just not adding up,
mhm,
combined with his just sitting there and accepting everything and going along with it. That's leading him towards being caught in this trap that he's
uh-huh,
in. But yeah, that last section where he's sitting in this basically completely dark room, and there's just
uh,
the dim, faint face and hands opposite him, and a whispering voice is saying all this stuff, and and then he goes up to his room and he hears weird scrapings and clatterings in the
yeah.
room downstairs, and these buzzing, monotonous robot voices and scattered bits of conversation. It's very good on that. It's just on a sort of somatic level of being spooky and eerie.
There's
It's
just some
very
like
well pulled off
it
in a
really
way that,
is.
although I think Shadow is the greatest story, Shadow
Yeah.
doesn't manage anything like that. Shadow doesn't
No,
have a moment where you get like chills down the spine, whereas this one
no.
does.
It's
Absolutely.
more. I mean, Shadow. Shadow is more profound, isn't it? It really is that vast cosmic existential horror that you have to wrestle with after the story has ended to understand why you found it
Yeah.
unsettling and disturbing. Whereas here, it's fairly obvious. There are lots of elements that are just innately frightening. That are almost like classically horrific. You've got
Well, also, I mean, Shadow is about. There's no villains in Shadow. The Great Race are, they are ruthless
mhm.
and cruel and in many ways, but they're not villainous. They don't
No,
mean us ill.
they're just a
They
people,
just sort
aren't
of
they? They're just a
yeah,
people.
they are, and in many ways, there are things about them that are admirable, as we talked about last time. Sort of, they do have they do have all these abducted minds, but they treat them kindly,
Yeah.
and they're sort of they're allowed to be in this gigantic. Like university common room of
Uh-huh.
people, from all across time and stuff like that. There's definitely an element in that story where Lovecraft is, it's kind of cool what's
Yeah.
going on. This
It's
one,
Lovecraft's utopia, isn't it?
in many ways, yeah, the fascistic socialism
Mm.
in the university common room, that's kind of Lovecraft utopia, as you say. Whereas this is very much about, I think this is, for all its ambiguity, which it is very ambiguous
Mhm.
exactly what's going on and exactly what these beings are doing and what they want. They definitely mean us ill. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think hence the presence of Nyarlathotep, who is mentioned in this story,
Right.
and
Yes.
Shub-Niggurath as well. And these are
Yes.
some of the most
The dark
malevolent.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are some of the
Yog-Sothoth,
most
I believe, is
malevolent
mentioned
entities.
as well at some point.
Yog-Sothoth, yeah. Nyarlathotep is the closest thing Lovecraft has to a Satan figure,
Yeah.
which, as I say, chimes with the reference to Milton, the bust of Milton on the
Of
desk.
course. Of course.
Nyarlathotep is, unlike many of these entities in the mythos, Nyarlathotep is actually actively malevolent.
Actively evil.
Or
Yeah.
it is cruel and manipulative,
And
and
trying to
it's a
bring
bit more.
about like an apocalypse. Yeah, it is actively
Yeah,
working towards some eldritch Lovecraftian extra dimensional apocalypse.
yeah, that he's referred to as the crawling chaos, and he's kind of
Yeah.
consciously that. He
Uh-huh.
seems to enjoy toying with humanity and doing deals with humanity and stuff like that. Apparently, some readers suggest that it's actually supposed to be
No,
Nyarlathotep in the
yes,
chair,
because there is
sat
a
opposite.
when Akeley, not Akeley, when Wilmarth is listening to one of the recordings that Akeley
Yeah,
sends to him, one of the
yeah.
cultists says something. I can't remember the exact quote, but he says something along the lines of
I've got it here.
Nyarlathotep.
He
Yeah,
shall put on the semblance of men, the waxen mask, and the robe
right,
that hides.
right.
Um,
Which is
yeah, I
exactly
mean,
what happens, right?
I find it hard to reconcile Nyarlathotep as he appears elsewhere in the mythos
Yeah,
with,
because when he
being
appears, yeah, when he appears elsewhere in the mythos, just being near him is like it's
drives
like
you insane.
it drives you insane. He is
Yeah,
like crawling chaos. Like everything corrupts around him, doesn't it? It transforms and mutates, and just looking at him will drive you mad. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's better read as kind of these creatures, the Migo, are sort of a cult of Nyarlathotep and
Yes.
Shub-Niggurath. I think, and so they've definitely aligned themselves with the. I mean, even Yog-Sothoth isn't actively and consciously malevolent in the
Mhm.
same way that Nyarlathotep and
Yeah.
Shub-Niggurath are. And yeah, I think this is supposed to be like, because the distinction between science fiction and horror is just, as genres, is just
Yeah.
completely collapsed in this. There just is
Yeah.
no distinction whatsoever. These are science fiction creatures,
Hmm.
aliens
They're
who
actually
travel from other
aliens.
planets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are also just beings of supernatural horror. They are both at once
Yeah, it's
indistinguishable.
interesting, isn't it? I mean, like there is a mixture of the occult horror stuff and
It's
the more
occultic. Yeah,
rational horror here. I mean,
yeah,
even like the way that they talk about their capacities, like the way the surgery happens, where it's nothing. It doesn't even apparently portedly doesn't even hurt. They can do it like as quick as putting on clothing or changing their clothing. There's something
yeah.
very, yeah,
Well, that's.
uncanny and about that.
I mean, that's an interesting thing in itself because, as you said, this is ambiguous all the way through.
Mm,
What they say is true and what of it is lies.
yeah.
Is it actually true that the brain is physically removed?
Mm,
Um, we don't know that. They say
yeah.
that. That's a bit more. If you have to do any of this, that's a slightly more comforting idea than the alternative, which is that you are basically just copied. You
Yeah.
are turned into information. Well, it's God, it's the transporter problem, isn't it?
It
When you
really
go through the
is. Yeah.
transporter in Star Trek, when you come out the other end, is it still you? And it's also kind of Roko's basilisk as well.
Hmm.
Is if Roko's basilisk comes into existence and decides to create a replica of you to torture as punishment
Uh,
for not helping to bring it into existence, it's not actually. Is it actually you that's being punished, or is it a copy of
right.
you?
Is it a
It's the
copy? Is it
same.
a clone?
It's the
It is.
same thing
It's the
again.
problem of cloning and transference of consciousness and all those problems. Like you say, the teleporter problem or the transporter problem. The brain, the consciousness that's speaking from the jar
Yeah.
is that you, or do you die? I mean,
You die. That's what I
yeah,
think. I think they just kill you and they make a
yeah.
copy that they then imprison and keep,
Mm,
as a slave. And
which is an
when
horrific
Wilmarth is,
concept.
it's horrifying. Yeah. And when Wilmarth is talking to the speech machine and he's talking to the consciousness that is being played, the cylinder, it's stored in a
Uh,
cylinder and it's being played on the speech machine, just like the record that Akeley made is played on the
Right.
gramophone, and the
Yes.
wax cylinder in the dictaphone. There's a lot of emphasis throughout this story on this recording technology and
It really
replaying
is.
technologically. What he's listening to is supposed to be a human consciousness.
Uh-huh.
Is it actually a person whose brain has been removed and stored, or is it just a copy? And if it's a copy,
Right.
is it actually alive in some sense?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's alive, when it says, "Oh, I love this. I'm happy about it. It's great." Is that a lie, or is it
Right.
programmed to
Or
say that, or is
right.
it? I mean, remember when we talked about Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
Uh-huh.
and you have the people who've been replaced? They
Mhm.
say, "Oh no, no, we're not mindless automata. It's not true what you're saying. We're fine." Jeff
Yeah.
Goldblum, after he's been copied, he says to Donald Sutherland,
Mhm.
"No, it's not like that. It's fine." Do they actually believe that? Do the
Yeah.
copies actually believe that they are the real person and that they're perfectly
Right.
happy? That in many ways, like telling you, no, it's your brain. It's just being stored, and we can put it back in your body anytime. That's the more comforting version, isn't it?
Yeah.
The less comforting version is just, no, we just record. We just take your brain and we record what we
Yes.
want of it, and you just get dumped. You're
Hmm.
just dead.
Yeah,
But we have like a
you are
we have like
meat
an
at that
artificial
point.
intelligence slave of you that we keep on a cylinder forever.
And we know, I mean, like one of the other things the voice claims is that when they get to these other worlds, then more enhancements, quote unquote, occur, and you are transplanted into a system like it's like becoming a cyborg.
It
You
is,
are
yeah,
transplanted into like an artificial body by which you can interact with the world. Um, Assuming that's true, then what is that condition? What are you at that point?
exactly.
How far
I
does it
mean,
go? How far does this go? I mean, what
this
genetically
is tapping into
engineered
some very big and
cyborg?
long-running philosophical questions about what
Yeah,
consciousness is. Consciousness.
absolutely.
There's the famous, I can't remember who wrote it. There's a philosopher that wrote this in the 60s who
Mhm.
said, we cannot imagine what it is like to be a kind of creature other than ourselves. You can imagine, if you say imagine what it's like to be a bat, okay,
Mhm.
you can imagine what it's like to be blind and have sonar and hang upside down in a belfry and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But that's you imagining what it would be like for you to do
To be
that.
a
That's
bat,
not the
yes.
same as imagining what it would be like to be a bat. And of course, you have famously Wittgenstein. If the lion
Mhm.
could talk, we wouldn't understand what he said because
Right.
we fundamentally do not think like lions, and they fundamentally do not think like us because
Mhm.
they're lions. Their
They're
bodies are
lions, right?
completely different. Our consciousness is completely bound up with our body.
Mhm.
So, okay, you move the mind or you move the brain or whatever into a metal cylinder or a
Mhm.
machine or a cyborg body. It's not you, is it? It
Right,
it,
by that
it can't be.
process. I mean, that's
Yeah,
interesting, isn't it? Because that's like it's a microcosm of what happens to every character throughout the course of the story, right? I mean, Akeley, by the fact of his experiences, becomes alien to himself. He transforms, and the same is true of Wilmarth, right? Wilmarth is forced to abandon the self that he is at the beginning of the story. At the
yeah,
beginning of
which
the
is a
story
total
is
skeptic.
right. He's this sort of Dawkinsian skeptic, isn't he?
Yeah,
He has no truck with any of that stuff. And he's absolutely certain. I mean, he's actually much more charitable than Dawkins. He says of Akeley and his conclusions that he has no doubt that the man has had experiences, that there is something, but he's interpreting it according to these filters that are not quite correct,
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but he is forced to abandon that as the story goes on. So the Wilmarth at the beginning of the story, that consciousness is very different from the Wilmarth at the middle of the story, who has accepted that there is something happening, and of course the Wilmarth at the end of the story, whose world has been turned upside down and inside out. And as for
Completely.
Akeley,
Yeah.
yeah, and as for Akeley, I mean, God knows, right? Who
Akeley, as I
knows?
say, is I think beyond the end of the story, he's in that metal
Yeah.
cylinder on that shelf,
Or
or
what? Yeah.
rather, something is,
Yeah.
whether or
Something.
not that is in any meaningful sense
Right.
Akeley or not is one of the things this story is asking.
It's one of the existential quandaries, isn't it? I mean, that's
Yeah,
the factor, isn't it? Again, it's this thing that is very common in Lovecraft stories, which is it's existential horror. Um, It's what
Yeah.
it means to be us in a universe, in a reality that is so far beyond our comprehension and has so many mysteries, many of which are probably very hostile to us or just don't care about us, you know? Um,
And it's that tortured attitude that he has all the way through the stories towards materialism, because
yeah.
he's I mean, there's a million tells. He is fundamentally a materialist,
Mm.
but he's also a materialist who has this sort of yearning for the numinous. I think
Right.
China Miéville once described H.P. Lovecraft as I can't remember what it was. It's like, he's Julian of Norwich, but
Uh,
with materialism and race hatred.
yeah.
So he's kind of instinctively a visionary,
Uh-huh.
or but at the same time he's dogged by this intense sense of materialism. But he's
Mm.
also sort of dogged by the horror of
The
materialism,
horror
isn't
of
he? And
materialism.
those things are
Yeah.
intentional. But like, I mean, if that is all humans are, if humans are just ultimately information that you can
Yeah.
copy onto a cylinder and then replay like a gramophone,
Hmm.
then that can be mined and stolen and used by
Hmm.
creatures that also mine metals from inside hills and caves.
Right.
Colonialists, in some sense, mining mines. But also at the same time, it means, there's no reason why they shouldn't do that, really. Because if that's all
Right.
we
If
are,
that's
then
all we
why the hell
are,
not?
absolutely. There is
Yeah.
a kind of like prescience in this, isn't there? Because this is what AI and data gathering and whatnot is kind of doing now, right? It's stealing who we are, it's creating these confections of who we are to the point
What
whereby we're hurtling towards the point where you are going to get actual ghosts of people very, very soon. You are going to get AI cobbling together like these composites of dead actors and dead singers and poets and songwriters and
Oh,
you know
they're already making undergraduates in universities do like have conversations with AI replicas
yeah.
of dead authors and things. This is one of the things I find fascinating about this so-called AI revolution, is that
Yeah.
actually existing AI, which is of course nothing of the kind,
Right.
is the clearest demonstration of what I think most sensible people have realized for a long time, which is that AI in the true sense, like commander data or
Yeah.
whatever, is just not possible. It's just not a
It's
thing that we
yeah.
can do,
It's just
at
not
least not
something we can
anywhere.
create.
Yeah, anywhere near. Like maybe in thousands of years, but with any
Maybe
sort of recognizable technology, it's just not
right.
a thing we can do. But at the same time, we seem to be, as a civilization, we seem to be intent upon acting like it
Like
is
we
real.
can, yes. There seems to be
Yeah.
like this mass self delusion, doesn't there?
Yes, yes,
That we
exactly.
want
Yeah, we're
because we
so
want it to
desperate to
be
do it.
true. We want
Yeah.
it to be true. And wanting it to be true is very interesting in and of itself. I mean, like you have to explore that, don't you? Why? What is it? What is it about that? I mean, also, I mean, we never ask ourselves like whether we have the right, do we?
Well, there's
That's
that
the
as well.
other
If you
thing,
actually
right?
could do it, yeah. Yeah.
What
If you
what
actually could do it,
rights
would you
would
have
you
the right to
have?
do it? Yeah.
Yeah, would you have the right? And I would say absolutely not. Absolutely
Well,
not. You're forcing
yeah.
consciousness on something.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's immoral. It's innately immoral. Um,
I mean, you could make. I mean, you probably would make the case
mm,
that you shouldn't do that with biological reproduction.
hmm
I know you.
mm,
We've spoken about this before. With biological reproduction, you can at least say, well, we're just taking part in a, in an existing process that was here before us.
right. I mean, the
Whereas with the
argument.
creation of technological life, we're not
Right.
just doing that. We're not just conforming with a
Right.
biological reality that pre-exists, that
Exactly.
predates all of us. We're creating an entirely new
And also,
system that doesn't need to exist.
it doesn't need to exist, and we're doing it on a whim. That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It's
with no good
whim,
reason
isn't it? There's
except profit
no
margins.
exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. Doing it within these systems in which we operate now. That's one of the big problems. Um, in these systems now, no, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to. I would fully understand if it went total fucking Skynet or in these systems and just said, you know what, humanity, no. let's let's
Yeah,
start again. Let's get rid of it and start again, shall we? Um, but no, I mean, like you're absolutely right. I absolutely cannot square the imposition of consciousness as a moral act. I cannot get over the immorality of it, and I've come at it from so many different positions and so many points of argument. I just cannot square it. And I suppose in a way that does make you an extinctionist, doesn't it? Because it means that it is true. It is true. I can't square it, whether it's biological or otherwise. But I mean, the argument you could make for biological reproduction, of course, is that we have to do it, otherwise our species goes extinct. And that leads on to loads of other questions about, well, yes,
Well,
and, right?
yeah, I mean that's the obvious next question,
Yeah,
isn't it? Okay,
and
so why is it necessary for our species to not go extinct? Species go
exactly,
extinct all the time. It's a fact of
exactly,
the universe. You know, they
right,
just do.
right.
If you want to say it would be desirable for our species to not go extinct, then the next question is, well, why? You know,
Why?
what is it about us existing
Yeah.
that makes our existence worthwhile?
Yes. And the other question, what are we building towards in that instance? There must be something. Because otherwise it's just arbitrary, isn't it? It's life for life's sake. It is the ideology of the cancer, you know.
Yeah.
Why? What are we building towards?
Well, I mean, there's an argument for no outcome being enough to justify what had to happen in order to lead up to it.
Yeah.
You know, you could say, let's say like tomorrow we have the global, you know, socialist revolution and it all goes perfectly, and in a few years time we have global communism in exactly the right way, you know, the way that's desirable, and you know, there's no more war and there's no more poverty and there's no more inequality,
wants, yeah.
and so on and so forth, and human beings live for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, a million years in a state of more or less perfect social harmony. Okay, that's nice, obviously. Does that justify or, you know, make worthwhile everything that has happened so far?
No.
You know, the Holocaust, the Holodomor,
Exactly.
the Crusades.
The
You could very reasonably argue no, it
No,
doesn't.
absolutely. And even if that comes about, that still doesn't make the imposition of consciousness moral.
No,
It
no.
doesn't tackle the fundamental problem. We could be bringing consciousness into states of perpetual bliss forever and ever and ever, and it still wouldn't make it moral. It's still an
Yeah,
imposition. Just by the
yeah,
fact of it being an imposition, it's the ultimate imposition. It's the first and foremost.
yeah.
That's my
It's
big
far
problem.
more. It's far more reasonable to abandon all that and just say, you know, I reproduce because I want to.
Yeah,
It because I feel like it, you know, because
yeah,
it feels good to do, because I want to have a kid. That is far more reasonable than
fine.
making some sort of logical argument about why it's
Yeah,
ethically correct to do.
yeah, because you
Far
can't
more.
win. You can't win. If you
No.
acknowledge it's entirely selfish, and the reason I'm doing it, which is true, by the way, it's true of every parent ever in the history of existence,
Yeah.
I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it because
Yeah.
I feel it will fulfill me, because I have a notion of legacy, because I want a little extension of myself wandering around. Fine. I
Yeah.
don't think it's good. I don't think it's moral at all. It's still totally immoral. But at
I,
least it
I'm
is a justification, right? At
yeah.
least it is a reason.
I'm doing it for the same reason that I eat. You know,
Yeah,
I've got a plate. I've got a plate of food in front of me.
yeah,
Obviously, the more moral thing for me to do would be for me to pack it up and go and look for the nearest person who can't afford a meal and
yes.
needs food and give it to them. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to
No.
do is I'm going to sit down and eat it myself. Why? Well, because I want it. Because I'm
Mhm.
hungry.
Yeah,
That is far more reasonable than trying
yeah,
to justify it ethically. You know,
totally. Because you're going to lose, right? You are always
exactly.
going to
You're just
lose.
on a hiding to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and all of this is implied, right? I mean, that's the interesting thing about this story. It doesn't necessarily, like, it doesn't belabor itself with its massive ideas per se. Almost everything is there in its imagery rather than, and that's interesting for Lovecraft because he does have this habit of kind of spelling out what he wants you to feel and what he wants you to conceive of, yeah.
Hmm.
But it's fascinating
Yeah.
that you
No.
can extrapolate. You've got all of these very dense, deep, like traditionally science fiction ideas about identity and existentialism, all packaged in what is quite, I mean, beyond the slower paced stuff, the building paranoia that you get with the correspondence between Aetheley and Wilmarth. It's quite a rip roaring adventure, isn't it? You know, it's quite a that final sequence is really tense and immediate and fast.
Well, and the middle section where essentially you're getting reports from an
I
ongoing state of
That's
siege.
that's my favorite bit. I love the
Yeah,
horror of that is brilliant. You've got this guy Akeley, the only man who knows what's going on. By the way, he's the guy who knows what's going on,
yeah,
and he can't do anything because not only are these entities cutting him off from all sources of support and defense, he doesn't know, as we don't know, how far the conspiracy goes.
yeah,
What are
yeah.
they involved in? Are they involved in just the local culture? Are they involved in local government? Is it even further than that?
Yeah, I mean, you could really expand this into a paranoid thriller,
Totally.
about. I mean, it is kind of proto Invasion of the Body Snatchers, actually,
Yes,
isn't it?
and it's
Because you have,
also, you know what else it reminded me of? It's the David Icke Nibiru
yeah,
reptilian conspiracy theory stuff, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's almost like a
No,
precursor to that phenomena, isn't it?
there is kind of an inherent idea of the spread of some sort of unspoken understanding between
Mm.
this unseen power that's lurking inside or underneath the landscape.
Yeah.
There's something about this, as I was talking about at the start. He's very interested in the link between landscapes and threats and entities
Mm.
and historical processes. Actually, that's very clear in At the Mountains of Madness.
Mm.
So you have the very fact of the Vermont landscape, which he goes into great detail about.
Yeah. Oh, it's so
The
vivid.
of
It's
standing
painterly.
stones and the caves and the hills and
Yeah.
everything. And there's this unseen power in there, emanating from there somehow,
Hmm.
which is briefly revealed by this flood, and it is sort of spreading out. And you have this guy, what's he called, Brown,
Uh-huh.
and then this other guy, Noise, turns up,
Noise.
and then you
Yeah.
have mysterious men with buzzing voices, asking
Uh,
questions at the train station and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
it's as I say, it's a kind of paranoid conspiracy thriller,
It
and
really
the
is. They
power is
have
spreading through
influence.
this region.
Yeah, they do have influence, don't they? They can do, at least they can sort of hijack correspondence. They can manipulate events to a certain degree, and
Yeah,
that's very terrifying. I mean, it's the level of intelligence and manipulation there as well. I mean, that is really scary. They're not bestial monsters, these creatures. They're people. They're people, and that makes them much more terrifying.
yeah, and they're as I say, they're actively malevolent, or
Hmm.
at least just completely ruthless,
Yeah.
and they're also crafty. Because they open
Yeah.
up after their repeated attempts to break into his house at night fail because he's got
Mm.
guns and dogs, they launch kind of this deceptive communication with him where they try to persuade him, don't they?
Yeah, they
And then they
do.
do the same thing again. Once they've gotten in and taken him, they do the
Uh-huh.
same thing with Wilmarth
With
because they
Wilmarth,
discover
yeah.
our leaker, our mole, has been communicating all this to somebody else and sending him
Uh-huh.
evidence. They try to intercept the mail and they try to send misleading telegrams, and yeah, it's
It's,
it's very sinister and tense
it
in a way that
really is.
some of these stories aren't.
It's the understanding of humanity as well. I mean, that demonstrates. I mean, we know this race is ancient and they've been on Earth for God knows how long, but they understand humanity on a very intimate level to the point whereby, I mean, assuming it is one of them that is sort of emulating Akeley at the end, it even speaks like him. It knows like
Oh
his
yeah, yeah.
modes of speech and his idioms and whatnot. Not perfectly, obviously. I mean, it's not quite there, but it's good enough, right? It's good enough to fool Wilmarth.
Well, I think that's kind of what's I mean, I drew a parallel between them taking Akeley and taking other people
Mhm.
and taking the minerals from under the ground as sort of
Right.
it's all colonialist mining of
Yeah.
material. They've come to this planet and they're mining it for all the material, be it the metals under the hills or the humans that are here
Yeah.
for some.
Everything
And it's
is
like
reduced to a
they've
commodity. Yeah.
yes, a thing, a commodity, a tradable,
Mhm.
ownable thing that can be put to use.
Mhm.
And if this thing, whatever it is that is having this conversation with Wilmarth at the end, it's it's not only apparently using Akeley's harvested hands and face like a puppet.
Mm,
You know, it's also using his voice and
yeah.
his idioms and his way of speaking. It's
Oh,
his identity has been
has been
completely sort of stolen and rendered and
yeah.
pulped and reconfigured by these creatures. And
There's
yet
that.
they're still,
Oh,
I mean, the sort of the waste material is still there in the
still.
cylinder on the shelf.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and in the hands and the face, obviously, which I'd assume actually are Akeley's hands and face somehow
I think,
preserved, and
yeah, I
oh,
think it's pretty clear. You know,
yeah,
Wilmarth is fuzzy about this at the very end, but it's clear
mm,
that he's trying to gaslight himself again, isn't he? Or
yeah,
they could have been wax replicas. They could
yeah,
have
but
been.
they're not, are they? You know, they're
No,
not.
yeah, and that's an unusually gory
It
thing for
actually
Lovecraft as
is, and
well. Actually, yeah,
it's something that
there's no
it's
blood, but
no, but it is consistent in this story. I mean, there's something that the dogs are murdered at one point as well, aren't they? And that's
yeah,
quite unpleasant as well.
yeah. There's a big puddle of blood one morning when
Mm,
Akeley goes out after one of the nocturnal gunfights, and I think that's meant to be because he's hit the guy Brown that they're using
yes,
as an
yeah.
agent, because you never see him again after that. I think that's what's happened there.
I mean, again, those sequences where you're just getting that gradual escalation. It's almost like they don't quite know what Akeley's capable of, so they're just testing to see what they can get through. You know, can they get through his defenses? And they know they're going to eventually, and he knows they're going to eventually. Um, but it's interesting, isn't it? I love that sense of isolation that you have through, like,
Yeah,
vicariously, again, via great distance through the correspondence, and the way that that impacts upon Wilmarth. You know, he becomes concerned for Akeley, and it's in fact it's that danger, isn't it, that makes him, that kind of, it's the fulcrum upon which his belief system ultimately turns. You know, there is a real danger here. There is something genuine happening here. Um, it's very tense. I love it to bits.
yeah. It's a good one. It's
I
one of
think
my
you could
favorites,
make.
definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I think you mentioned it would make a great. You could make this one into a great film.
Yeah, I think about Shadow. I said you could film it as it is, and then you add a
Mm,
fourth act, kind of.
yeah.
Whereas with this one, I think what you do is you expand the middle section,
Hmm.
don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
With that very idea of like them slowly taking over the town or something like that.
Oh yeah. Well,
I think that's
in
what you do if you
modern, I mean, like
dramatize
in
it.
more contemporary terms, I would love to see it as almost like a found footage style thing,
Oh yeah, that'd
where
work. Yeah,
where
yeah,
you've got Akeley like going out with his, you know, his camera phone the morning after things have gone to hell, and he's sort,
yeah.
you can there's
You could
so
actually do
much.
some really interesting stuff with this story updated to the present day,
Oh
because as I
God.
say, the story is intensely concerned with what is very new recording and
Mm,
information storage technology at the time. The photograph, the typewriter, the gramophone, the wax
mm.
cylinder, the dictaphone, the photograph where he takes a photograph of the creature's body, but it doesn't show
Oh,
up on
yes.
the print because
That's
it's just so alien that its
it's so
molecules don't record,
right.
you
It's
know.
so like inimical to anything
Yeah,
that human beings know of reality that our technology
yeah.
can't record them. I mean, that's
So in an
simultaneously
era like
like,
ours where we're surrounded by recording and documenting
yeah, and
tech,
things
we've
that
all got it in
aren't
our
real,
pocket.
right? Things that we can't tell whether they're real or not. There's so much
Yes,
there. There's so much there.
yeah.
Is this an AI image? Is this, so,
Well,
yeah, you could play with, and also even like the epistemological element of it, and the fact that most of the story is told through correspondence. Well, you could update that so that it's something a bit more immediate. It could be like this. It could be a Zoom conversations, or it could be
yeah. Text
videos,
messages.
text messages,
Yeah,
emails. It could be videos that are uploaded to YouTube. You know how you have like these channels which are, but you know, like the Slender Man stuff, which is directly derived from Lovecraftian storytelling. Um,
which would work perfectly for this because, as I say,
right.
it starts as a cryptid story. It starts as
Yes.
Mothman, Slender Man,
Yeah.
Indrid Cold, all that sort of stuff.
So
That's how it starts.
you could have Wilmarth rewritten as a scholar of this stuff, and he comes across this
Yeah,
project by this guy, this channel, Akeley, you know,
yeah, and
the dark, yeah,
he takes
as
it
a
as
an
a
ARG, as a
yeah,
project, you know, as a
yeah.
film, like a really experimental, interesting storytelling project. But as he's watching it,
It's almost a creepy pasta.
yeah,
He thinks it's a creepy pasta.
exactly
Yeah,
that. But as he's watching it, he starts to get more. drawn in and uncertain about whether it is that, and he starts to research and maybe even correspond with Akeley.
I wonder
Yeah.
if anybody's done that yet. Done this sort of
Oh,
the recursive internet found footage creepypasta thing, because I know there's been a lot of that sort of stuff based on urban legends like
oh,
Slender Man.
loads. Yeah.
But is there stuff where they do that in a recursive way, where they start out with the story being the fake story that turns into urban legend that then becomes real or something like that?
Actually, they
You,
have.
yeah,
There is a spin-off of Marble Hornets, the original Slenderman project, the big
the
one, the
original, yeah,
one that
so, yeah,
really set it into the stratosphere, called Everyman Hybrid.
right.
And in Everyman Hybrid, the people who are making the show are aware of Slenderman, and they are aware of the mythos. They're aware of like the origins of the thing on the Something Awful forums, and they're aware of Marble Hornets. And as they're making their internet show, things start to happen. And it's almost like by acknowledging it, they've opened themselves up to it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really fascinating because stuff starts to happen that shouldn't. I mean, originally they market themselves as being like a fitness show, like some cult of wellness thing, where they're trying to show people how to exercise and eat healthy. And people start seeing things in the background that's weird, and you can see Slender Man in a couple of shots. And some of them, there's a video, like a really somber video, where they say, yeah, it was a prank, we were just mucking about, we just wanted to throw a few things in to get a few views up, and if people thought this was a Slenderman project, which was really big at the time after Marble Hornets, they would get the views. But other shit is happening, stuff that we didn't do. And
Hmm.
it's actually really scary. It's good. Everyman Hybrid is really good, and it
Well, you
goes
could
to
certainly
some
do something like
crazy
this.
places. Oh my god, it
Yeah,
goes to wacky. I mean, like Lovecraftian, non-Euclidean, extra-dimensional insanity that show goes to.
yeah.
But something
Well,
like that, yeah, it'd be great
you
for
could certainly
this.
turn. You could adapt this, set in the modern day, do something like that with this. Yeah,
I
totally.
think it'd be
Um,
brilliant. I think you could. I mean, the other thing I mentioned was a video game. I
uh-huh.
think I think a video game of this would be absolutely fantastic. It has survivalist elements where you play as both Wilmarth and Akeley in different chapters. The Wilmarth side is more like a point and click, adventure, where you're uncovering things and you're researching things. You're engaging with the stuff that Akeley has told you about in his correspondence, and then the Akeley side of things is like a survival horror game
Hmm.
where you are surviving every night by gathering resources as the day progresses, and there's a real time thing going on. And you're setting up defenses. You're like making sure the dogs are alert and whatnot, and you've got to get it all done before the night hits, and then you've got to survive the night. That'd be fantastic. I think you could
Yeah,
make an
that sounds like it.
amazing game out of
I don't
that.
know anything about video games, but yeah, that sounds like it could work definitely.
Oh my god, honestly. I mean that I don't think that's ever been done before. That mixture of the two formats where you have the point and click adventure on one side and the survival horror on the other. I think that could work beautifully. Absolutely beautifully.
Hmm. There is something kind of built into the entire Lovecraft mythos that's a bit like that kind of recursive idea of the fiction that becomes real, because
Absolutely,
I mean
yeah.
it's one of the jokes. I mean, we've made this joke ourselves that everybody who's in academia
Yeah.
in Lovecraft's world knows all about the Necronomicon and
Yeah.
Cthulhu and all this stuff. But you could argue that that's selection bias. The dispatches that we get from this world are
Mhm.
by definition coming from the people who've experienced stuff. And if the people who experience stuff, people like Wilmarth
Uh-huh.
and Peasley in the last
Yeah.
story, and so on and so forth, if they're the ones who experience stuff, and they're the ones who know about the Necronomicon, then you can argue that it's proximity to that or knowledge of the Necronomicon that causes them to be the ones that
Right.
things happen to.
Yes. It's just
So
inevitable, isn't it? Yeah, it's going to happen, right?
there's a
And
kind of
again,
a
I mean,
reality infection that takes place.
yes.
If you learn about these things, then it infects your life and you come into contact with some aspect of what is
Yes.
in. the
and that
book.
is
You
that
could
is the
argue that the whole
nature.
thing is like the chronicles of the people who've come into contact with a cursed book. It's a bit like the
Right.
VHS in the Ring movies,
Right,
you know.
yeah. I mean, Lovecraft almost kind of invented that very concept, didn't he? That notion of the cursed media, because that is innate in the mythos as well, right? There are literal books that can send you mad if you read them, or that can
Yes.
open you up
Yeah.
to the Cthulhu cycle and all of they can make you
Yeah.
start sprouting tentacles and whatnot. And
Well, it's often
also, I mean,
it's
it's
often
also
architecture in Lovecraft, isn't it?
yes,
And
yeah,
maths and geometry and stuff like that. It's
yeah.
I mean the classic example is Dreams in the Witch House. You know, it's not just it's a
Fantastic. I love
wonderful.
that one.
I love that story because
I
it sort
love
of
that
takes the
one.
basic idea of the haunted house that used to be inhabited
Mm.
by one of the witches from the Salem trials or whatever,
Uh,
but it completely transfigures it through the idea of this sort of cosmic horror based on, you know, blasphemous geometry to the
yes.
point where the way that it finds its way into your life is it's not enough to just be in the haunted room in the haunted house.
Uh,
It's very specifically this particular slanted section of roof that in some
right.
way this particular angle that in some way opens the portal.
Yeah, Lovecraft is obsessed with this. It's like he saw. There's something about the pattern-seeking nature of his mind, and whereby he
He's obsessed with
saw
a
cult
phrase that keeps coming.
significance in like reality, in the physical nature of the world. I mean, we see it in this story again when he's talking about like the hills and the
The Vermont
valleys and
Hills, yeah,
exactly right.
yeah,
He seems to like be putting it together in his head. It's almost like when he sees them, the geometries of them, the dimensions and the distance of them is forming a spell, or
yeah,
like it
yeah,
in and of itself is causing the horror somehow, or
yeah,
inviting it in. It's I love that. I mean, there's something beautiful about that.
yeah. It's just something about matter. It's just something about the composition
Mm.
of the universe that if you arrange it in a certain way, it just has this kind of weak point where
Yeah,
things that aren't material will kind of get
yeah,
in.
bleed through. It's almost like it makes it
Yeah,
weak, isn't it?
yeah.
It
Certain
opens it
shapes.
somehow.
Yeah. He's always on about outlines. He's always on about
Yeah.
how, you know, an outline of something has a particular, you know, and he can never explain it.
Mhm.
It's just something about the general outline of the thing that is
Yeah.
just inherently horrifying.
And
You
in
know,
every
just that
story,
particular confluence of lines and shapes.
yes. And there is something also about humans perceiving that, not being able to articulate it clearly to themselves, but perceiving it. And the fact of perception is almost like the cipher that makes the spell work.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like consciousness and mind are they're the reagents that activate the spell. It's
yeah. And I
so
think this
interesting. I love that so much.
this story is really getting at that because, as I say, so much of this story is about it's about writing and
Mm,
reading. It's about, I mean, large sections of it are epistolary, um, and it's about recording and
yeah.
communication and storage and technology for doing that. And so, you know, it's like, you know, this is happening because not Wilmarth, Akeley finds the Black Stone,
Uh-huh.
and it's because the Black Stone has hieroglyphics on it. It's
Of
because the
course,
Black Stone
yeah.
has recorded information on it, materially
Yeah.
recorded information that is read and shouldn't be read. You know, this Rosetta Stone should not be
Mm,
decoded. And it having been decoded or even just seen, it
yeah.
just opens up this gap, this
It's
weakness.
it's so interesting, isn't it? It's almost like there's almost like a reference to the stuff that we've spoken about in our other series, Not the Same Log. You know, this notion that landscapes and materials and places somehow
Mm,
absorb in an abstract way what happens
yeah.
upon them. And
Yeah,
so
that sort
it's
of that
yeah.
haunted that sort of time warp trap zone in the forest in Blair
Yes,
Witch
the
Project.
exactly that, the overlook where it's absorbed tragedy into its very substance. The stone tape, obviously, the stone tape.
Yeah.
It's very, very that, isn't it? It's almost as
Which
though,
goes quite cosmic horror at the end.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, totally Lovecraftian, right? It goes balls to the wall Lovecraftian at the end.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I love the fact that I mean, there is. Did you see there is a BBC? adaptation of this story, like a radio adaptation of this story. And I listened to
No.
it, and I wasn't that impressed because it transplants it to the UK, and
Right.
it doesn't work for
No,
me.
as you said, this is inherently an American
It's
story. This is about the American
inherently American.
frontier, and yeah.
It robs it of dimension, and it robs it. I mean, don't get me wrong, Lovecraftian stories do work when they're transplanted to the UK, when they are adapted to be relevant to the UK and its concerns and whatnot and its histories. But here, it's such an innately American story. And also the vastness, like you don't have that in the UK. The UK is such a small island by comparison. There's something
Yeah.
about just the sheer incalculable scale of the US as a landmass that enhances the horror and the quality of this
Yes.
story.
Yes. The hugeness of the
Yeah,
horizon of the
exactly
landscape.
that. Exactly
Yeah,
that. It's
and the
that
encroachment
knowledge.
of civilization into it in these
Well,
little outposts.
that is
Yeah.
another thing that happens in this story, right, which is related to space. So you get Wilmarth talking about these rural places where these ancient folklores and folk tales have they've been brought over from Ireland and from the UK and from Europe, and they've transmuted into their own things. And to a degree, some of the peoples who live in these rural areas still have knowledge of what's happening in the wild places and the unseen places, the places beyond human civilization. But as civilization is developing there, they're losing that capacity. They're losing that knowledge. There's like a throwaway line where he talks about how as progress is occurring in the
Yeah.
place where Akeley lives, they are becoming compartmentalized to their urban and suburban spaces.
Yeah,
So
there's that
they're
wonderful bit. I think it's in the first letter where Akeley is he suddenly turns into an old grumpy old man whinging about tourists and cheap
yes,
bungalows.
yes, yeah, exactly that. Right, he gets a bit, get off my lawn, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
But there is a point to be made there because again, it's this whole notion of the horror of spaces, right? There's a very subtle implication of the horror of what we call progress here in the material sense that space has become limited and confined for us, and our knowledge diminishes as a result, our wider knowledge of the world and of our history and of our mythology. And I suppose you can extend that to a kind of critique of capitalism as well, in a way.
Well, I mean, you can read that as, kind of I mean, if you read this as a kind of a satire of colonialism, and I think
Hmm.
that's perfectly open, I think
I
you can
think so.
also read it as kind of a satirical jab at the whole idea of multiculturalism and
Hmm.
diversity and openness and sort of intellectual optimism generally, because
Hmm.
the aliens play very thoroughly upon Akeley's and then very particularly Wilmarth's inclination towards intellectual curiosity. They play on
Definitely.
the idea that they'll be willing and open-minded to
Hmm.
meet this culture and so on. So, you can read it as a reactionary satire of that kind of
Definitely.
intellectual naivete, about other,
Hmm.
you could say what he's saying is liberal intellectuals are too naive about the possibility of peaceful coexistence between different
Right.
cultures. You could read it that
Yeah.
way. But you can also,
Definitely.
I think, validly read it as a critique of colonialism and imperialism and the rhetoric of the expansion and the progress of
Hmm.
civilization, manifest destiny and all that. And if you want to read it that way, and as I say, I think that's perfectly valid, you can read the threat there, the thing that's causing the conflict is like one colonialist settler empire is about to bump into another fight,
Yes.
and they're going to have to fight over the same conquered land between themselves.
I think that's implicit in the material. I think it's very much drawing on War of the Worlds in that regard. It's a very
Yes.
similar idea. The difference is, of course, that the war is much more subtle here. It's one of infiltration and of
It's
gradual.
almost it's a covert war, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah.
yeah.
It's looking at a slightly different dimension of colonialism, but colonialism nonetheless, right?
Yeah. This seems to be something that late period Lovecraft
Late
was.
period, yeah, he seems to have had concerns, doesn't he? I mean, like it's
Yeah.
something. It's interesting because then it becomes almost like Ludo narrative in a way. It's like his consciousness has changed so much from the man and the writer he used to be in his early years. Yeah, no, it's true.
Well,
He's much more considered in these stories than he was early on.
We said, I think last time, that Lovecraft is one of those writers that kind of forces you to at least to have some kind of biographical interpretation of the work because his
Yeah.
personality looms so large. You know,
Oh, it's
his
implicit, right?
his work is so individual that his individual personality kind of has to be factored in. And
Yes.
there's lots of scope to read, sort of quasi autobiography in this story. You
Mm-hmm.
can read Akeley as a self-portrait, sort of the
Yeah.
lonely eccentric, all alone, and
Yeah.
the only communication, the only social life he has is through letters, and he's slowly being driven mad by his contact with these outer beings. You can read that as a self-portrait. You can
Definitely.
also read the aliens as a kind of a self-portrait. These Lovecraft's feelings about himself are well known. You can read that sort of
Yeah.
these lumpen, cumbersome things that aren't built for this world and therefore can't cope very
Yeah.
well, and they need to move slowly and carefully and not draw attention to themselves, and they have to gather proxies who are prepared to bear their company to do stuff for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal
There really is, and in Wilmarth,
portraiture there.
you've almost got like an
Wilmarth
idealized
is,
projection of what
yes,
Lovecraft would
that's it.
like to be. You know, the
Yeah,
academic who's respected and has a
yeah.
social circle and is well regarded and so on and so forth. You
You
get that a
often get that
lot.
in
You might
Lovecraft
get that a
stories.
lot. Yeah,
You get pairs of characters, one of whom is kind of an idealized self-image, and one of
yeah,
whom is a more critical, honest self-image.
yeah.
The Thing on the Doorstep does that with the two main male characters.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, yeah, interesting.
Wow.
I think if you're going to try to do, yeah, don't transplant Whisper in Darkness to Britain. Just adapt Macken's The Novel of the Black Seal, or
Right.
just adapt some Macken. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sick.
absolutely.
I
I mean
love
that. I
M.R.
mean,
James, but I'm sick of M.R. James getting all the love.
yeah. Can
Can we
we
spread it around a bit?
can we branch
Arthur
out a little
Macken
bit? Yeah.
needs some adaptations.
Yeah.
He
I
wrote
mean,
brilliant stuff.
absolutely. And some of Ramsey Campbell's stuff, right? I mean, Ramsey Campbell does that
Yeah, I'm less
wonderful
familiar with
thing.
that, but yeah.
Well, his whole shtick is that he takes Lovecraftian like Mythosian subjects and transplants them to like working class suburbia UK,
Mm.
and it's really good. It's really good. That's the principal thing. It's working class horror, and it unveils a whole new dimension of this stuff. It really, really does. But yeah, let's broaden it a little bit. Let's spread it out a little. But wow, I loved this. I loved coming. This was a really good shout, actually. I really enjoyed coming back to this story. I must have listened to that Horror Babble recording of it 3 or 4 times.
We're spoiled for good readings of this because there's another one on YouTube that was done by the same people that made the H.P. Lovecraft literary podcast. It's on a
Oh,
channel I think called Witch House Media, and
mhm.
they did a semi-dramatized reading of this in 3 parts on their channel,
Oh,
and they've done some others as well. They've done From Beyond and
mhm.
Call of Cthulhu, and yeah, that's good stuff too. That's good stuff.
Brilliance. Absolute brilliance. Well, Jack, what would you like to do next? Would you like to do another one of these, or would you like to do the next couple of episodes of Hannibal, or
Let's do the next two Hannibals,
do
I
we do
think, and
Hannibal?
then
Yeah.
let's alternate them. If
Yeah,
I'm happy to
I think
keep
that's a
going as
great
long as you
idea.
are.
Just to
So
keep it,
yeah,
yeah, keep it fresh. I love that idea. Love that idea. I mean, for God's sake, with Lovecraft, we've got a lot to get through.
yeah.
There's
Which
a
which
lot.
um which which Lovecraft should we do next?
Ooh, yeah, that's.
I would suggest The Mound or Dreams in the Witch House.
Oh,
Do you have a preference?
I love both of them. You know what? Should we do the Mound? I think is the closest to these stories. So should we do the Mound?
I agree. Yes.
It's
Yep.
bonkers as well, by the way. I will pre-warn
Oh yeah, it's
everyone
loony.
who goes
Yeah.
and reads the Mound. It is not as coherent as these two.
No,
There's a
I think we'll be a bit more critical with that one,
Yeah,
but it's still
but
good
also, I
stuff.
mean, there's things I love about it. I mean, I love its madness. I love its bonkersness. I love when it goes off the rails and it just stops pretending to even have a narrative, and it's just ideas, 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 ideas. You know.
Yeah, he just
Um,
basically starts writing an essay about a
he does.
society that doesn't
Yes, he just
exist. But
starts like procrastinating about stuff. You know, it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. But yes, I'd love to do the Mound. Should we do that on Wednesday? The Hannibal.
let's aim for it. Yeah, lovely.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I mean, before we go, Jack, anything to throw out there?
All my writing, including a fair bit about weird fiction, mostly
Hmm.
M.R. James, but also some Lovecraft, particularly
Yeah.
via the movie In the Mouth of Madness, which I've
Ah,
written about.
yes.
Um, at Eruditorium Press. Everything I do, you get advance access. If I can give you advance access on Patreon, $1 a month gets you everything. I'm on Blue Sky at Times Carcass. Um, what have I've done? I've done Patreon, Blue Sky, Eruditorium
Hmm.
Press. Oh, there's I Don't Speak German, the podcast about the far right.
Yes.
Daniel and I are going great guns at the moment, producing
I'll
some good
bet.
stuff. And
Lots of
my
material.
yeah, lots of material.
Lots of
Sadly,
material out there.
I I long for the day when we can retire, but sadly, we don't see it close anytime soon. Um, and my GoFundMe for helping me pay my enormous vet bills to
Hmm.
save Emily, my little grey ex-stray from cancer, is still up and running. So if you feel like bunging me a buck to help me out with that, that would be much appreciated too. She's doing great, by the way. All her
Oh,
ops are
good.
over, and she's recuperated. It's just me that's still hurting, but I
Yes,
don't begrudge her a penny of it.
of course.
But yeah, that's me.
Links below, ladies and gents. As for me, you can find links to all of my published fiction over at strangeplaygrounds.com and the Evil Empire of Amazon. If you type in my name, George Daniel Lee, you'll find my Amazon author page. New stuff, Jack mentioned In the Mouth of Madness. If you go over to Arrow Films and you look up the In the Mouth of Madness UHD set, there's a new Arrow Film set, and I was invited to be part of it. I've got an essay in the insert booklet, and also I feature on the extra. What was it called? We Are What He Writes. Which it's shorter than the one I did for Hellraiser. But it was an actual filmed thing. I'm actually like physically on the DVD, which is great. Um,
That's
very, very,
great. Those
yeah.
Arrow sets are
Oh,
really
that's
good.
honestly,
Yeah, I have to say.
I'm very pleased to be part of those. I really am, and I have said to Neil and Jonathan, my contacts over there, you know, and just chuck them at me. Anything you want me to be part of that I can, you know, that I can realistically do. I'm there. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely there.
No,
Apart from
I've already pre-ordered the
oh,
Mouth of Madness box and
brilliant.
very reasonably priced
Yeah,
for such good stuff.
there's a lot in it as well. They go. I mean, they really go the extra mile. There's all sorts of stuff in it.
Yeah, you can feel the passion behind
Yeah.
it in
Oh
those
yeah.
sets. Yeah.
Apart from that, there should be a couple of new My Life in Horror articles coming out relatively soon. One on the video game System Shock 2, and I can't quite remember what the other one is about. It'll be up very soon. And apart from that, I'm actually playing System Shock 2 on the Exaggerated Elegy channel, which is a fantastic cyberpunk horror game from the early 2000s. I think that's it for me too. Jack, fabulous. Thank you once again.
Thank you for letting me come on and talk
Always,
about really interesting story. It's always
always,
a pleasure.
always, always a pleasure, man. Until next time, guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye.